Go to London and speak to Tom Packer. He's a fellow at the Centre on US Politics at University College London. Just listening to that report from Craig, it occurred to me, Tom, that the Americans purchased a bit of their own territory from the Mexicans and the French, but that's a long, long time ago. Is this really, is this economic? Is this economic for Trump? It takes 5 months and about 15,000 kilometers longer if a ship can't use the Panama Canal and has to cross underneath South America. Or is this something to do with China?
I mean, there are some arguments being made that the Panama Canal is too open to China and there's various vulnerabilities to China. But as long as America militarily dominates the Western Hemisphere, I wouldn't exaggerate any threat on that basis. I think, like some of these things, like particularly Panama and Greenland, come out of a history of people feeling that the US should be more involved, the US should have a greater role. But I would emphasize this above all as kind of tub thumping, that Trump is trying to sound strong, he's trying to sound powerful, he's trying to sound like he's putting America first. I would emphasize it's worth remembering that one of the big problems Joe Biden had domestically, probably not the biggest, was being seen as weak, particularly after he withdrew from Afghanistan. And Trump is at least perceived as taking a relatively pacific line on stuff like Ukraine. So trying to sound tub-thumping and aggressively pro-American at least makes some kind of political sense. And then on the details and the suggestion that they might, there might be some sort of military thing, I think that's just Trump's style, which is when he's in a conversation, when he's made a point, he will never back down. He'll never say, well, obviously going that far would be insane. That's just not his rhetorical style. But we had him president for 4 years. And the fact is he didn't go around invading people much. So I wouldn't overread Trump's style as some big declaration of policy.
What about the bigger fallout here, Tom? Because the French and the Germans have already said in the past few hours, they've warned Trump, you can't change borders by force. Greenland is an autonomous region that belongs to Denmark. Is he again going to turn friends into enemies?
I think that's a very legitimate point, and particularly, actually, it might in some way be even better focusing on Denmark, which is possibly the most pro-American West European country, possibly even more than the UK, certainly much more than France or Germany. And I think that obviously is the danger of this kind of rhetoric. I would perhaps contextualize that a bit. Like, the truth is, borders get changed by force quite a lot. The United States effectively took Kosovo out of Yugoslavia or Serbia quite recently in boundaries of Europe, and the French and the Germans didn't stop that happening. But Greenland is a slightly interesting case, and there's a strong independence movement, and the Danish government has, as I understand it, essentially said they'd accept it. Now, in the event, the big barrier Greenland independence has been economic, that there's massive subsidy of the Greenland welfare state by Denmark. Obviously, there's only 56,000 people in Greenland, so the US could, if they spent 60 billion, which is not a lot of money for the US, make them all millionaires. So if Greenland independence gets more on the cards, having said, I don't think it's ridiculous to think it might end up becoming a territory of the United States. Having said that, this is not the way you do this. So Trump's strong style has advantages in getting benefits from allies and so forth, but it's obviously deeply alienating for no good reason. Like, you could easily have made the same points in a much more conciliatory manner. And, that is the nature of Trump's rhetorical style. It's not a style I think is particularly conducive to international diplomacy, but nor do I think it's necessarily disastrous in the way it's sometimes portrayed as being. And I think people need to be, I think one needs to be a bit more careful about saying, oh, you can't change boundaries by force. Like, the boundaries of almost every country in Europe were drawn by force. And the notion, Helen Thompson, professor at Cambridge, was pointing this out, the notion that history suddenly stopped because we're in the modern world is one of the delusions of our age. But I think in terms of what your viewers are probably most interested in on this, the notion the US is going to invade Greenland is not going to happen. There will be overwhelming opposition in Congress. Trump is not the kind of president to go out on a limb. He is the kind of president to rhetorically go out on a limb, but he's not the kind of president to actually do it. It's not going to happen.
Tom, obviously, after January the 20th, you're going to be very, very busy for at least 4 years. So let's just keep this final one brief, because I know you'll be coming back to us over the next 4 years. Do you think that Trump's influence over the next term of his presidency is going to affect the outside world more or inside America more?
I mean, obviously, America's his own country, so it's likely to have more effect. I think he's a big influence in America, outside some possibly very important redrafting of the executive branch, is likely to be in appointments, people like judges and various commissions that are very powerful in the United States. He has virtually no majority in Congress, and he's probably going to lose at least the House one.
But he wants to decimate the civil service, doesn't he? He wants to put all his own loyalists in because he remembered from his first term, you were the guys, the civil service, who were stopping me from doing what I wanted to do.
I think I tend to go with the view that past performance is the best predictor of future. He's never disobeyed a court order. It's just very hard for the president to do stuff internally. It's much easier for him to do stuff externally. So the president has huge power over foreign policy, but even that has limits. And we saw that with Trump last time. This is the guy, this is the president under whom aid to Ukraine rose and so forth. So I wouldn't exaggerate his role in that, but I definitely think it would matter more. But where I would caution your listeners, viewers, from doing is mistaking Trump's bluster for very clear policy. Like, he says stuff other presidents won't do. He does stuff other presidents won't do to a much lesser degree. And obviously, we'll see over the next 4 years how far that continues.
Yeah, well, his defense secretary, Mark Esper, said he wanted to bomb drugs labs in Mexico. Tom, thank you so much indeed. Really appreciate it.